So here we go. Finally, we're back at my Japan Life series after taking a boy. How many weeks has it been? But that immigration stuff had me distracted for a while. It was fun, immigration was fun talking about it, but it seems to have cooled off for the moment. I will be probably following up with other stories in the future, but I thought today I'd do a video on one of our main themes, which is my Japan life. Now, in past episodes, if you haven't seen them, you can go back and take a look at them. I talked about why I became aware of Japan and the trip that I went through to get me to Japan. And the last time I talked about this, I left off where I had just arrived at Yokota Air Base in Western Tokyo. And I got off the airplane, as I said, with I think about five guys, and five guys got on, and the airplane took off to complete its trip into Vietnam. Those poor guys had to go into the Vietnam War from then. I hope all of them made it back, but we got off at Yokota. Now, arriving at the airbase, here I was in Japan. My dream come true. But still, it really didn't feel that much like Japan at the time. And that was mainly because a military base is a military base. And all you do is you get off the airplane and you walk over to this area and submit your papers, and they tell you to go get on a bus. And we got on a typical Air Force bus. And for those who don't know, an Air Force bus, at that time at least, was same as your yellow school buses that you have running around the United States, except it's painted navy blue instead of yellow. So we get on this Air Force bus. The driver is Japanese, of course, but he didn't, he just sat there and opened the door and let us get in. And we settle into our seats and we go take our drive from Yokota Air Base over to Tachikawa Air Base, which is not, it wasn't very far away. I think it's not even 30 minutes, maybe 30 minutes away by car at that time. And so as we're traveling, a new country, looking out the window. But in those days, this area, the area of Tachikawa, was not very built up. There were a lot of open land. So we're going through all these different open land areas, looking out. Okay, nothing really to see. But finally, we get to the base, to Tachikawa Air Base. Now, of course, at Tachikawa Air Base, you submit your papers again. You get assigned a bunk, In those days, to get from one place to the other, like I said in my previous episodes, I went from Chicago to Oakland, spent about a week in Oakland. Then from Oakland, I came to Tachikawa, and I knew I would spend about a week in Tachikawa before they would finally send me down to Kyushu, which was my ultimate destination. So again, we're on a big, humongous American air base. And it's like being in America. A little bit, few accents here and there were different, but basically it was similar to living in America. Some of the workers there, of course, were Japanese. American military always made it a policy to try to employ local labor as much as possible. So many of the people working at the stores and the shops and even some of the, none of the actual military clerical positions, but there were a lot of Japanese people running around. But of course, all of those Japanese people spoke English very well, which I guess was a requirement at the time. So you go through your processing, meeting various people, go here, submit your paper, okay, now take this, go over there, the typical military thing, running around in circles. And as you go through this, you're interacting with various Japanese people, but these various Japanese people speak only English, and to us at least. And they had the Japanese characteristics, but they also had a kind of American characteristics as well. So though it was kind of different, it wasn't that much different. So as I said, I don't know if I spent only one day or a couple of days going through processing before I went off base. I don't remember having jet lag or anything like that. So the memory is hazy. But eventually I thought, well, time to go off base. And the first time I went off base was in the evening, changed into our civilian clothes, and thought, okay, this is it. We're going to go into Japan. So went off the base, and I remember virtually as soon as you stepped off the base, it may not have been true, but my memory is as soon as you stepped through the gate of the base, there was this area of bars, and all the bars were geared towards the military on Tachikawa Air Base. It was like stepping into a world of Terry and the Pirates, or Steve Canyon, or something like that. All of these exotic looking signs, I thought they were exotic looking, but now that I think about it, most of them were in English, and most of the bar names were like Texas Bar or Shanghai, or maybe people who were actually stationed in Tachikawa for a long time can give us some actual bar names that were around at the time. But like I said, I think I went to that area maybe once, and that was enough for me, because like I said, it's very glitzy, very bright colored, red, green, red, white, and blue, signs to appeal to the young American military people. And you had your pick, and you're sitting there, you feel like you're in an adult Disneyland. You don't know what to expect. You're wondering what's on the other side of that door, but at the same time, you're apprehensive. Now, remember, I was coming to Japan after spending 16 months in Shemiya, Alaska, which was a small 2-mile by 4-mile island out at the end of the Aleutian chain. So it was like I was coming to Japan out of Alcatraz or something like that. So I was really kept up, and I was a young guy. I was just turned 21. So I'm really, wow, wonder what it's like in there, but I don't want to get cheated and stuff like that. So finally, I don't know how we finally decided, or what was the thing that attracted us to any particular place. We ended up going into a bar. I was with a small group of guys. So you go in and you sit down, and right away you sit down at a table, and right away, at least one, maybe a couple of young women come over right away. They sit down. Hi, how are you? What's your name? And they're probably trained to spot the newbies, the fresh meat as soon as possible. And so they sit down and they chat you up, and they're very nice and very pleasant and very engaging, trying to, they ask you questions like they're really interested. Oh yeah, like you're something special. But somewhere along the line, they ask you, hey, buy me a drink. Now, of course, you want to be friendly. You want the girl to stay there. So it's easy to say, yeah, I'll buy you a drink. What do you want? And they always wanted some special kind of cocktail. They had funny names to those too. Honeymoon cocktail, or I don't remember exactly what they were called, but maybe honeymoon cocktail was one of them. Again, if we've got any veterans from around the Tachikawa area to fill in the holes of my story, it would be greatly appreciated. So the thing is, these women are, they're B girls, what they used to call B girls, which is if you bought them a drink, the drink was basically a soft drink, and they would get a commission for every drink they would get you to buy for them. So they were really trying to pump you to buy as many drinks as possible. If you stopped buying drinks, or if you showed any resistance, you were all of a sudden all alone, sitting there to nurse your drink and whatever else you had in your hand. But then, and there were, there was always guys behind the bar, young guys, looking serious, watching, keeping an eye on the girls. I didn't encounter any problem or any trouble while I was there, but the guys gave you that kind of vibe. If anything starts happening, we're going to get in there and take care of it. Somebody starts abusing the girls or getting obnoxiously drunk or something like that. So, okay. And that was my one night in outside of Tachikawa Air Base. I do remember getting pretty lit up being in such a place. in such a condition, at such an age, coming off of such an island. And I do remember over drinking and probably acting like a fool. But finally, we made it back to the base, and that was it. And I only remember that one night. I'm not saying that I only went out that one night, but that's the one night that I do remember was the first night, because it was such a shock to my system. So a couple days later, or the next day, I don't remember exactly when, I thought I had some free time in the afternoon. So I decided, well, I'm going to go walk around Tachikawa City. You know, there must be more to this city than bars and things like that. And so I went off the base and just started strolling around. Now, if you've been to Tachikawa lately, you'll know that Tachikawa is a very cosmopolitan place now. It's very built up, a lot of big buildings and department stores and monorail, and looks like a very modern metropolis right now. But back in those days, Tachikawa and Western Japan in general was pretty much countryside. And Tachikawa City was like a little village, to tell you the truth. As I walk along, I remember perhaps the tallest building I saw was 2 or 3 stories. And it was, you know, typical Japan small town at that time. I remember one thing. I mean, this is not to demean anything, but it was something that shocked me. I was walking along and I came past, there was an open lot and there were some cars parked there. Maybe it was a parking lot, I don't know. But as I went by, I looked over, and between the cars was this old woman. And she was there, and she squatted down and picked up her whatever she was wearing and relieved herself right there, urinated right there, right in public in front of everybody. And I was woo at that time. You don't see any of that now, but at that time, I did see it, and that surprised me. But Tachikawa struck me as a pretty rundown place, and pretty, like I said, they depended upon the base for their economy. And as I think about it now, you know, that old woman and some of the older people around there, you have to think, boy, they must have gone through a lot in their lives to be where they were at that time. You know, I mean, here they were probably brought up as young people, taught to hate the West in general. And during the militarization of Japan, and they were probably subjected to a lot of indoctrination in school. And then during the war, of course, they were taught to hate Americans, and that the American was the devil and their enemy. And now here they were walking around among them. Now, I didn't understand any Japanese at the time, but I imagine, you know, I could only imagine what people are saying when they see these young GIs walking around their street. I mean, that was like 1969. So that's what, around 20 years since the end of the war. 20 years is not that long. I mean, if you're young, you think 20 years is a long time, but it's not. But let me talk about Tachikawa Air Base a little bit. Tachikawa Air Base was this humongous air base. And it closed in 1977. It was originally a Japanese air base, and the Americans took it over after World War II. And now, if you ever come back, if you were a resident or a veteran of Tachikawa Air Base, if you ever come back to Tachikawa to visit, you'll find out that Tachikawa Air Base is now a big memorial park. It's called Showa Memorial Park. In Japanese, that's Showa Kinen Koen. And it's a gigantic park. And I walk through Showa Park occasionally, and I always am fascinated at the size of the place. If that whole thing was an air base, it's pretty amazing, because it's a massive, massive piece of land. Actually, though Tachikawa Air Base, American Air Base, was closed in 1977 and the area was turned into a park, there is still one small section that's still operational even today, and that's called Tachikawa Airfield. And the Tachikawa Airfield is a heliport, and it's shared by the Japanese Self-Defense Forces and the Japanese Fire Department. And it's used for a base of helicopters that are used for rescue and in case of disaster. And it's I live not too far from there, and I'm not here. I'm not in Tachikawa because, oh, this is my home sweet home. It was just by luck that I ended up back here. I'll go into that one of these days if you want to hear it. But when I first moved here from Fukuoka, I remember when I was my first morning. I was sleeping away, and then about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, from the Tachikawa airfield, they started doing helicopter hovering drills. So here I am sleeping. You know how in the morning you're halfway in sleep and halfway out of sleep, and all of a sudden I hear, and I go, whoa, and at any moment I expected the Doors to start singing, "This is the end," and it's pretty noisy. And even though the airfield is not that close to where I live, the helicopter noise carries a lot. So anyway, I experienced a little bit of Tachikawa at nighttime, a little bit of Tachikawa in the daytime, went through the rest of my processing. Those are about the only 2 days I remember about being off base. I might have done it more, I don't remember, but those 2 days I remember very, very clearly. But after spending a week, maybe less, in Tachikawa, one day they said to us, okay, you're shipping down to Fukuoka tomorrow, so have your stuff packed, and you'll get on the bus at such and such a day, such and such a time, and we'll go over to Yokota Air Base, get on an airplane, and take you down to Fukuoka. So in my next installment of My Japan Life, I'll be telling you about my initial days in Fukuoka, and even though both places are in Japan, Tokyo and Fukuoka might as well be in two totally different worlds. So I'll see you next time with My Japan Life.